If everybody voted, if we could mobilize all of those people who feel disenfranchised because they're not wealthy and they're not encouraged to participate, maybe we would have a different public policy, a different government. We'd have different society. Well, I'm Robert MacDermid. I'm a professor of political science at York University, and I teach a number of courses in the Canadian field. And I'm particularly interested in things around Canadian government, and particularly around the politics. I didn't start off in political science. I started off in geography and geology when I went to university. And I happened to take a political science course to make up the schedule, and began to really be interested in that. And then really from then on, I just remained curious about political events, and in particular around elections and how people react to elections. But I mean, obviously one develops your intellectual interests as you get older. Well, curiosity drives all academics. We are, and that is the greatest part of the job, there is no other job, I don't think, in the world where you haven't a boss who says you must be curious about X or Y or something. Being an academic gives you that freedom to be curious about all sorts of things. It may not be immediately your specialty, it may be something else, but it gives you the opportunity to pursue that. How I got interested, though, in campaign finance, I think, was more specific. And that began, as I said, I was interested in campaign advertising and began to realize how expensive it is for parties. And in fact, at federal elections, it's not unusual for a political party to spend 50 or 60% of its entire budget on running, 30-second spots on ads. It's a huge part of the campaign effort and budget. And then I began looking through, it was about the mid-90s or a little after, and at that point, election authorities like Elections Ontario or Elections Canada began to put these lists of contributors onto the internet. You begin to understand, by looking at those lists, the grouping of companies, the grouping of interests. You begin to see, whoa, pharmaceutical companies give a lot of money to provincial governments. And then you begin to think, well, why is that? Well, of course, it's because they want their drugs to be on the formulary of OHIP to make sure that they have an assured profit. And you see things like banks. Banks give a lot of money at the provincial level and used to give it at the federal level when they were allowed to. Why? Well, because they're regulated by the federal government and partially by the provincial government as well. And all of these things jump out, and you begin to realize connections between policy areas and giving, and often between, the policy outcomes. So, I got interested in, I guess, from all of those reasons, and just a natural sense that of interest in equality, of interest in transferring, democratic equality and preventing it from being eroded or corroded by political inequality. That we live in a society which is manifestly unequal. How can we stop that inequality, in other words, the power of the wealthy, from being transferred into democratic politics so they can run the show, by manipulating the campaigns of the candidates, by making sure sets of candidates which are favorable to their principles are put up, and so on.